r/us credit. Former homeless people, how did you turn your life around? I was living out of a truck after college when my shitty minimum wage cooking job couldn't pay rent. I never considered myself to be truly homeless as I had my truck, but I suppose it still counts. I helped a stranded guy in a parking lot by showing him my favorite trick. If an older car won't crank, but you know it has power, try hitting the starter with something. He and I got to talking, and it turns out he was a warehouse manager for a business down by the airport. He gave me a time to show up for an interview. I showed up, got the job, and spent a week doing the most mind-numbing, boring task. I took travel toothbrushes out of cases of 1,000 and packed them into boxes of 20. There was an entire pallet of the cases. When I was done, the boss told me I did great. I guess they like to use tasks like that as a way of testing people. I got trained to be a forklift operating, which came with a pay bump, and I could afford to live in an apartment with my brother. For me, this was an easy path. I wasn't homeless for very long. I had my truck, and my student id would still get me into buildings where I could take a shower. Truly homeless people who've been on the streets much longer, don't get opportunities like I was given. I talked to a lot of them while hanging out in a park together. Most of them don't see themselves ever not being homeless. We'd avoid talking about the future. I had recently separated from my wife. We have 3 kids together. For most of our marriage, she was a SAHM, and we married fairly young, so she had little work experience and only a high school diploma. When we separated, based on my income, I paid a lot of child support. After about 6 to 7 months, my contract wasn't renewed. I went from making about $80k/e to just over $23k. Because we had just finalized our custody and child support orders, we weren't allowed to reverse it for another 18 months. I couldn't afford my rent and child support, so I paid my child support instead of rent and was evicted. I lived in my sub for about 3 months. During that time, I enrolled in community college, so I could at least get my housing stipend from my GI Bill and some wages from work study. While I was going to school, I worked on campus, played poker, and a few other side gigs to make ends meet. Our custody arrangement had me with the kids every other weekend. When they were with me, we'd go camping. Long story short, I transferred to a 4-year school, graduated, summa cum laude, BTW, and found a well-paying job that allowed me to get back on my feet. I moved in with my girlfriend, which helped even more, since it allowed me to pay off my past due car payments and stuff. Now I work 3 part-time jobs, by choice, instead of 1 full-time job, so I have the freedom and flexibility while making roughly the same amount of money. I'm financially secure now, but the GI Bill and earning a college degree at 35 years old was what got me over the hump. How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. The real trick to all of this was having the mentality and strength to keep up all the effort. At first it will seem like a waste of time. People look at you like you're less than dirt, and that's if they look at you at all. It's important to keep your humanity and not let it get to your head. Easier said than done, I assure you. The first step is getting consistent money. Easiest way to do that is a job. Some people panhandle. Personally, I think that's just digging yourself into a deeper hole. Now you're relying on charity instead of doing it yourself, and if you don't want to stay homeless, you can't rely on people like that. It's hard getting a job without an address or phone, but it's doable thanks to public libraries and government programs, or just some off-the-books work like landscaping, which usually pays better, but can be unreliable. Food pantries will make it so you won't starve, and hopefully it doesn't get too cold wherever you're at. It sure did for me though. Homeless shelters are sketchy at best and dangerous at worst. I'd rather be outside where I can watch my stuff, unless it was too cold to bear. When it is cold, the shelters are full anyways. The second step is becoming presentable. Truth is, nobody wants to hire a homeless person when they can hire someone stable instead. That's just how it is. Frankly, if you want more than minimum wage, which you'd be lucky to get, then you're going to have to trick people into thinking you're not homeless. For me, this was discount and charity cloths and a gym membership to use their shower. Get good at cutting your own hair too, and make sure to shave as often as you can. You can get a couple days out of some cloths, but make sure to use the washer dryer when you can afford it. The third step is to stop being homeless. It's hard, like really hard, but you can do it. It's more mental than anything. Eventually after working you have enough to rent a place. It'll be a shithole, but it's your shithole. After that is the same grind as every other working class Joe. You'll keep up the hard work, because you know how hard it becomes once you stop. I had a bad way of life, which made me lose everything, home and job. Spent some time on my friends' couches, and smoked weed a lot. At some point my friends had enough of me, and threw me out. At some point I made friends with a guy, who was an absolute manchild, and I knew staying friends with this guy will destroy me one way or the other. So I sat on the sidewalk and contemplated. This is not the place I wanted to ever be. It was a dog-eat-dog world. I knew I still had a warrant by the police on me. Minor offense, substitutional sentence. I paid halfway before becoming homeless. I walked into the next police station, handed over my ID, and told the officer that if anything is open, I'd turn myself in. Quick checkup. Yep, something was open. Should also be mentioned, I'm not in the US. The police officers were perplexed, as they usually dealt with other shit happening around their neighborhood, and not people turning themselves in. One officer asked me why I turned myself in. I fucked up. I'm at a point in my life I don't want to be. No matter where I looked for help, you guys would take me in the second I moved, so I thought I'd turn myself in. I still have respects for those cops. Anyway, the prison time got me 3 weeks of a safe home and regular food. Since I turned myself in, I was in minimum security. After my release I moved into a crisis shelter, where the Carewalkers helped me get into a new space. Since then I quit weed, and upgraded my school degrees. Life still isn't running as smooth as I wish it to be, but at least I don't have to deal with the trials and tribulations of a homeless person. Immigrant USMC vet. I wanna be very clear first of all that I'm fully aware of how lucky and privileged I am. All the talk people have about just needing to get off your ass and work comes from a place of misunderstanding what makes people homeless to begin with. Yes, I had to work and accept every small opportunity I could, and swallow a lot of pride, but these are opportunities I had afforded to me, that most other people didn't have. I slept in abandoned buildings of neighborhoods starting to go through gentrification. I ate at the local shelter. I took an under-the-table job the local police chief set me up with, and started sleeping there. I started dating, and would spend more and more nights sleeping at the girls' places. The chief helped me get started back in school before I figured out how the GI Bill could work for me. I ended up couch surfing while working more on the book, but minimum wage jobs. Veteran Affairs get my school financing set up, so now I end up going to school full time, but keep working the shit jobs so I can afford a 1-bed flat. I get a job bouncing nights so I can go to the firefighting academy full time in the day. Eventually I'm working as a firefighter and bouncer in this town, and have 2 means of keeping my finger on the pulse of our local homeless population, and helping people one-on-one when I can. I'm a realist. I know I wouldn't have gotten where I did if I wasn't attractive or charming, and both substance and mental issues will prevent others from turning things around. I've a deal. If patience and understanding for the homeless population. You don't know everyone's story. A lot of people want to turn things around. A lot of people are willing to work to turn things around. They just mostly aren't lucky enough to be able to. I just wish more people were willing to give people a chance like someone was with me. I wasn't really homeless, but I did live in a cheap motel for nearly a year while in school. Shortly before that, I had come out as transgender to my mother, and her reaction was to push me towards an educational path that would make transition incredibly difficult. She was also adamant that I move far away from home. Obviously, she didn't hold a gun to my head or anything, but she knew how to push my buttons, and did not hesitate to do so. Although I did quite well in the program, I could not find a job and eventually took a position teaching ESL at some sort of startup college. I would have had to supplement that income with a second job, but it seemed doable. About a week before the classes were supposed to start, I got an email from the college telling me that the ESL classes had been postponed indefinitely. If they started up the next semester, I could teach. I had about $500 to my name and was living in one of the country's most expensive areas. My parents let me come back and live with them, and I found a job pretty quickly. I've since been able to transition and even get my face done. Although my experience with underhousing was quite an eye-opener. It is pretty easy to slip through the cracks, even if you're getting an education and don't have addiction issues or things like that. Iceland has the best rehab center in the world, Voga. When I decided I've had NR and finally went to rehab, I spent 20 days in their hospital getting free food, drugs to help with the withdrawal, amazing lectures on how the disease works, groups. After 20 days you pay around $500 for 30 days in rehab. The town paid for it because I had no money, and because I was homeless I got to go then a 2-year after rehab that focuses on rehabilitating you to the world again. I have that hospital and rehab to thank, and the countless people that help you in AA/NA. But what really turned my life around is that I finally started to follow and listen to people that have more knowledge of the things that I don't know, and that if I don't know what to do I just ask and get help, and when other people need help you're there for them. Today I live with my girlfriend and my cats, so life is pretty cool. Anyone have advice for someone who's disabled and homeless? My state refuses to give me benefits. They consider me able-bodied when I'm not. I was discharged from the military for my conditions, and my boyfriend and I were just kicked out of where we lived. You are the entire reason I created a Reddit account. It's very clear that there are many sincere, supportive people who use Reddit, and I have been looking for someone who is facing or has faced adversities similar to mine. Because fiance and I aren't just a young, unmarried, homeless couple who just can't get their shit together. *ARE love is patient, honest, tried and tested, and indestructible. No, unscratchable. I'll take the worst day with my baby instead of the best day without her. *EDUCATED, hardworking, kind, punctual, and thoughtful. *NO kids, by our own responsible choice. *NO criminal record, good looking, and affable, rigorously organized and budgeted. In other words, we are not what comes to mind when most people think of how most young couples are. Nonetheless, we are living in our car. I suffer from heart failure, cardiomyopathy. It was brought on by the combination of extreme physical and mental stress solely caused by my last full-time job. I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in a poorly managed sweet shop. The company cleaned linens for medical facilities, small and major healthcare providers. My minimum responsibilities included lifting 200 pounds of horrifying/infectious soiled linens onto a conveyor belt every 2 minutes. I was allowed 2 8-minute breaks and a 25-minute lunch. But because it took 3 to 4 minutes just to remove all the hazmat gear, I would just find a chair and try to rest up before we get back to it. With the hazmat suit, the massive industrial machines all running non-stop, combined with being upstairs and located in South Sacramento, the temperature was usually about 110-115 degree Fahrenheit. Once again 115 degrees, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, infectious medical linen that I had to repeatedly lift 200 pounds every 2 minutes. And a hostile work environment, wrought with the most shameless lowlifes running the place. By January 2018 they told me I most likely had about a month to live. Unable to work, we were evicted from the room we had been renting. We had no car, no bikes. Managed to salvage a few things into a storage facility. Briefly stayed with my parents, about a month. Long enough to get bikes and a job, despite my serious disability that the government refuses to acknowledge/pay me for. But it was clear that I couldn't stay any longer with my parents because of my dad's frequent horrible mood swings. Our relationship is complicated. I love my dad, But honestly, I'm surprised we were able to stay as long as we did. I get laid off from my job. Though I was a great employee, they were clearly only keeping me until they found someone qualified who also had military or law enforcement experience. I did not. Whatever. I quit another job at a pizza place. I was supposed to just do deliveries, but instead spent most of my time helping make pizzas in the hot kitchen. Turns out the other drivers are real unfriendly to new drivers who would be getting their tips. Working in the kitchen, I couldn't hide how much I was constantly sweating. This is obviously from my heart condition that management was fully aware of, and because it looks unprofessional to sweat so much, especially working with food, my hours were dramatically cut. It was humiliating. So I decided to quit. My fiance had just gotten hired doing stock in a popular clothing outlet. We had a reliable car, and somehow we managed to meet a wonderful business owner who allowed us to park our car in her business's parking lot every night so that we could sleep. Because she owned the land, cops couldn't bother us. So we had an income, transportation, and a place to crash at night. I'm still owed disability money because I'm unable to work. However, I'm still having unending difficulty getting results. Fiance works all she can. I do my best to handle all laundry, budgeting, cleaning, or other routine errands and chores. I try to make it as easy as possible for my fiance to get to work in clean clothes. After she has a breakfast, I pack the best lunches for her that I can manage while being as frugal as possible. Then I try to make it as easy as possible to return from work, get clean, get fed, get clean clothes, and have a plan regarding what we will do until it's late enough for us to park the car and set up for sleep. I spend a great deal of time in our public storage unit. It costs me nothing. There's no judgy strangers. I have a unit with electricity, so I have a fridge, mostly packed with fruits, vegetables, and ice water. I also have a microwave. I have a water dispenser positioned over a cooler that acts a makeshift sink. All the toiletries, laptop, phone, chargers, 2 portable power banks. This is where I take care of hygiene, stay hydrated without spending money, and I can make sure all our devices are fully charged before my fiance gets off work, cleans up, storage closes, and we are on our own in the car again. That's the routine. It could be much worse. We dealt with many kinds of hell. We have only done our best to keep fighting. Stay united. Fight through all adversity. The worst is surely behind us. Plus, I was supposed to be dead by February 2018. And yet, still very much alive. Still a good person, who believes in the good still left in the world. Still crazy in love with my best friend, my bass player in our band, my angel who stayed by my side, no matter how dark things seemed, Brianna. With her income, we can only afford our routine expenses, but never really save anything. We are very smart with money, and that's how we afford to maintain what we have. But getting an apartment is impossible with me receiving my disability money, plus bad credit, and a living arrangement that is difficult to explain. I check Craigslist for rooms for rent several times daily. There are plenty. However, every one of them states clearly no couples. I'd love any advice or any response to my verbal diarrhea. Any response would be great, but it's also totally cool if you don't want to bother. Lol. But I want to let you know that reading your comment, it sounded similar enough to mine. It made me feel not so alone. I feel validated. I wish I had some help to offer, but I don't. But I'm glad to talk anytime about anything. We are good people, and I bet you are too. And we all deserve much better. Just keep your chin up, stay firm at each other's side, and I'm sure it's all gonna get sorted. Absolutely. I was arrested for a DUI while being on juvenile parole. This messed up my parole, and I got violated. Basically maximumed out of the juvenile system and became an adult offender. I was released to a homeless shelter in Chicago at 18 with $30 to my name and a list of places that can help with clothes, food, and a shower. Took full advantage of this and was the best dressed homeless person. I had already spent several years in juvenile prison and got my first adult case. I knew tons of people that just kept going back to jail. I was over it and did not want to back and mess my whole life up. I got a job and used the homeless shelter as an address. I basically pretended I was a normal hard-working teen that disappeared at night. Had to be at the different church location if you wanted a meal and a pad to sleep on by 8 PM. They kick you out at 5 AM. I got a commission-based job being a survey administrator at a mall. I was really good at convincing people to take surveys for money. I'm not a bad looking guy, so I got a girlfriend that allowed me to stay with her. I used that job as stepping stone to become really good at sales. Got my own place, have a great job, have an awesome girl. Never been arrested or in trouble with the law since. I'm now 33 and will never be homeless again. 5 years after I got a home, I would see the same people standing in line at the shelters. To me, it was easy to be a bum. It was much harder to be a member of society. I could have drank and drugged every day like the other guys. There are plenty of people and scams you can run to get $20. I looked at all of them as my motivation to not be there. Not all, but some of them were there by choice. Others had mental and addiction issues. I just sacrificed having fun to work and improve my situation. Was homeless for about 6 months when I was 19, over 20 years old, following several shitty things happening at once. Mom dying, abusive dad suddenly back in the picture, the cost of housing in NJ, and losing my scholarship to school. I lived in my car. I would sleep in parking lots, shower at my gym, then go to school/work. I live in a very safe suburban area, so it wasn't that bad. Hardest thing was finding places to park. I tried never to sleep in the same parking lot more than once a week. Literally no one knew. I had a professional job. I was even a manager at the time. Attended school part-time and was even dating someone during this time period. I had it so much better than a lot of people in similar situations. I thank God I had a car, because if I hadn't, I have no idea what I would have done. I also got lucky because the period I was homeless for, March to early November, was not cold and made it feasible. Towards the end I was worrying I wouldn't be able to scrape together money for housing before it got cold, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do if that were the case. In the end I saved enough money for housing, shared room with a roommate. A few months after that, I moved in with the man I was dating, now my husband. And now years later I'm very much a suburban soccer mom. We own our house and that whole chapter of my life feels like it happened to someone else. I actually even miss some aspects of it. And when I bought my first ever brand new car a couple years ago, for a moment I hesitated because it wasn't big enough to sleep in, and then I remembered that isn't something I'll have to do in the near future. Currently technically homeless in Florida. Not straight up camping anymore, but at a friend and his family's house. Get full access to the house during the day and bad weather, but sleep in tents outside. We have real beds and it's more private than sleeping in their living room. We have fans, our PlayStation and TV, and the kids keep begging to go real camping. So it doesn't feel as bad when your kids see it as a fun adventure, instead of the reality you see as an adult. Fiance got a job. We are getting our vehicle fixed, so we don't have to borrow his dad's car. I'm job hunting now that 2 kids are in school and getting daycare lined up for toddler. We just got a 2-vehicle package deal that fiance can take parts from one and put them in the other, so I'll have a running vehicle soon. We're on the path out. Sad part is, because neither of us are addicts, there's no domestic violence, and we want to stay together as a family. It's super hard to get any kind of assistance or help into a better situation. Also, shelters were never any help, as they either wanted to separate us or long waiting lists. I'm honestly thinking I might end up this soon. Training to a job I despise that's taken away time with friends. My part-time passion job working with a friend. Can't pay to go to the gym anymore. Car is on a loan. Have a Wells Fargo loan. And live with 3 roommates in a duplex. I've had to wait 4 weeks to get this new job's first paycheck because Kronos is a piece of crap pay system. I've applied like a mad dog everywhere. I really don't want to do fast food or retail ever again, but I don't want to burden my roommates. I've thought of just finding a replacement for me and tell my mates that I found the opportunity I couldn't pass up in Cali while I live in my car and watch myself go bankrupt until they repo the car and I'd find a hole to sleep in, waiting for some bystander to slice my throat or tourists in the cold dark night. In my view, I would not give up a job I disliked, because if you ended up homeless, that disliked job will look good for its paycheck. I worked a job I hated one summer, since as a teacher I needed a summer job. At the end of summer the man was nice and offered me to return any time I needed hours during the school year and summers. I guess I did a good job and I politely thanked him while thinking I hate this job and will never ever do it again. But that summer I needed the money and so I kept it until fall. Perhaps you can sit with a person that is good with finances. Some places might have some financial advisors and have them help you figure out how you can work your budget and finances in a way to limit the amount you are paying or hunt for more employment you like and add on another job. You can always spend time with your friends later when you get more money. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.